Imagine a country brought to its knees. This was Germany after World War I ended in 1918. The war had been devastating, costing millions of lives and, well, vast amounts of money. The German people were exhausted and heartbroken. They had been told for years that they were winning, so the sudden defeat was a profound shock. The Kaiser, their emperor, fled the country, and a new government called the Weimar Republic was formed. This new government was a democracy, meaning people could vote for their leaders. But it was born into a time of immense crisis, and many Germans were not ready to trust it. The nation felt lost, searching for a way forward. The biggest burden placed upon Germany was the Treaty of Versailles. This was the peace agreement signed in 1919 by Germany and the victorious Allied powers. The treaty was incredibly harsh. It forced Germany to accept all the blame for starting the war. It also demanded that Germany pay enormous sums of money, called reparations, to the countries it had fought against. These payments were so large that they would cripple Germany's economy for decades. Into this climate of despair stepped Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Hitler was a powerful, charismatic speaker. He understood the anger and fear of ordinary Germans. He knew how to use it. He didn't offer complicated solutions. He painted a simple picture: good versus evil. You were not to blame. He promised to tear up the Treaty of Versailles, restore Germany's national pride, make the country strong and respected once again. His message, a cocktail of hope and anger: for the unemployed, jobs, rebuilding infrastructure in the military; for farmers, debt relief, support, fair prices; for the middle class, economic stability, an end to chaos; for nationalists, a restored empire, a Third Reich, unite all German-speaking people; big, bold promises, a glorious future versus grim present; a key part, scapegoats. They blamed Jewish people, accused of controlling the economy. They targeted communists, political opponents, anyone who didn't fit their narrow ideal. Adolf Hitler was not originally from Germany. He was born in Austria in 1889. After failing to become an artist, he served in the German army during World War I. The German defeat left him feeling bitter and directionless. In 1919, he joined a small, obscure group in Munich called the German Workers' Party. He quickly discovered he had a talent for public speaking. His passionate, hate-filled speeches drew larger and larger crowds. He soon became the party's leader, renaming it the Nazi Party and designing its infamous swastika flag. He was an agitator, a rabble-rouser who thrived on stirring up anger and resentment in the beer halls of Munich. In 1923, Hitler believed he had enough support to seize power by force. He led a failed coup attempt in Munich known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The coup was quickly crushed, and Hitler was arrested and put on trial for treason. However, he cleverly used the trial as a platform to spread his nationalist ideas across Germany. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison but served less than 1. During his time in Landsberg prison, he wrote his book, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. In this book, he outlined his racist ideology, his hatred for Jews, and his plans for Germany's future conquest. The failed putsch taught him a crucial lesson. He could not take power by force. He had to use the system to destroy the system. After his release from prison, Hitler rebuilt the Nazi Party with a new strategy. He decided to gain power legally, through elections. The party would participate in the democratic process of the Weimar Republic, with the ultimate goal of dismantling it from within. Throughout the mid-1920s, Germany's economy stabilized, and support for extremist parties like the Nazis dwindled. They remained a fringe group with very little representation in the German parliament, the Reichstag. During these years, Hitler focused on building the party's structure, creating a propaganda machine led by Joseph Goebbels, and establishing paramilitary groups like the SA, or stormtroopers, to intimidate opponents. The turning point came in 1929 with the Great Depression. The American stock market crash sent shockwaves across the world, and Germany's economy, which was heavily dependent on American loans, collapsed again. Unemployment soared, businesses failed, and people were once again plunged into poverty and despair. This was the crisis Hitler had been waiting for. As suffering increased, people lost faith in the mainstream political parties. They were desperate for a strong leader with simple answers. Hitler's radical message, which had seemed too extreme just a few years earlier, now found a massive and receptive audience. Nazi support at the ballot box began to skyrocket. As the Great Depression worsened, the democratic government of the Weimar Republic proved unable to cope. Political parties in the Reichstag were deeply divided and just couldn't agree on solutions. The government was weak and unstable, with chancellors changing frequently. This political paralysis made the democratic system look, well, ineffective and chaotic. People grew tired of the endless arguments and the lack of decisive action. In this vacuum of leadership, Hitler presented himself as the strong, decisive savior the nation needed. The Nazi Party's share of the vote grew dramatically in a series of elections between 1930 and 1932, making them the largest party in the Reichstag. Despite the Nazis' electoral success, many powerful Germans distrusted Hitler. Conservative politicians, military leaders, wealthy industrialists. They saw him as a vulgar and dangerous radical. However, they also feared a communist revolution even more. They foolishly believed they could control Hitler. In a fatal political miscalculation, a group of conservative elites convinced the aging president Paul von Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as chancellor. On January 30, 1933, Hitler legally became the head of the German government. His conservative partners thought they could use his popular support for their own goals and then sideline him. They were catastrophically wrong. Once in power, Hitler moved with lightning speed to dismantle democracy. Just a month after he became chancellor, the Reichstag building was set on fire. Hitler and the Nazis immediately blamed the communists and used the fire as a pretext to declare a state of emergency. President Hindenburg signed the Reichstag Fire Decree, which suspended basic civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to assemble. This decree effectively gave Hitler's government the power to arrest and imprison political opponents without trial. The foundations of German democracy were shattered in a matter of days. With his opponents silenced, Hitler pushed the Enabling Act through the Reichstag in March 1933. This law gave Hitler the power to pass laws without the Reichstag's approval for 4 years. By passing this act, the German parliament essentially voted itself out of existence, handing absolute dictatorial power to Hitler. Over the next year and a half, all other political parties were banned, trade unions were dissolved, opponents were sent to concentration camps. When President Hindenburg died in August 1934, Hitler merged the offices of Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer und Reichskanzler, or Leader and Reich Chancellor. The Weimar Republic was dead. Hitler's totalitarian dictatorship had begun. The story of Hitler's rise is a chilling reminder how a prosperous, educated, and cultured nation can descend into barbarism. It shows that democracy is not guaranteed. It is a fragile system that requires constant protection and participation from its citizens. The German people did not vote for a dictator in a single election. Instead, a series of crises, political division, a loss of faith in democratic institutions created an opening for an extremist movement. People were drawn to Hitler, not necessarily because they agreed with all his hateful ideas, but because he promised simple solutions to their complex problems: economic security, national pride, a return to order. Understanding this history is crucial because the warning signs are timeless. The story of how Hitler came to power is not just German history, it is a universal warning. It reminds us that democracy is a choice, and it is a choice we must keep making every single day.